And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. You're tuned in to Tapped Out. Hosted by Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine. Only on the BetQL Network.
Putting a bow on this Saturday night's edition of Tapped Out here on the BetQL Network. We're all just waiting, biding our time, licking our chops. We're 1 week away from the return of Jon Bones Jones, the greatest, in my opinion, UFC fighter of all time, taking on Ciryl Gane. I'm leaning Jon Jones because I think that you convinced me not only is he better at coming back from this time than anybody else, but on top of that, he's a different fighter when he's motivated. From the Ciryl Gane side of things, if Gane wins this, he becomes a legend, not just a champion, but he's the guy that took out Jon Jones.
That's going to be an interesting one, how much credit he's going to get for that, because I do think that, yes, beating Jon Jones is going to be very impressive, but it's going to be tough to know because, how does he beat him? How does the fight look? How does Jon look? But just beating him, and if Jon looks washed, then I don't think people are going to be giving him too much credit. And then you have a situation where you have a guy who lost to the champion as he walked away from the sport. So it is going to be an interesting one to see how people react to it.
We'll break this down from every single angle next Saturday night because our timing is going to be perfect. We're going to come on right before the main card starts. But now that we're sitting here a week away from it, what are you kind of thinking? Because I've told you a couple of times, I've flipped from Gane to Jon, but I'm sticking with it's definitely inside the distance, second or third round, this fight's finished.
I don't know if it's going to be that quick. Jon's typically a guy that will take his time. He doesn't really rush anything, but
it's also not a heavyweight. I think it's going to be different. He's big, and I know that he's carrying the weight pretty naturally, but he's big.
Well, that's the thing, though, that I think that he is going to still try and feel things out. He's always been that way. He's always been a guy that likes to feel things out in a fight, and I think that being able to feel out how does his body feel, how is his gas tank at heavyweight? I think those are going to be some fascinating things to check out as well. But I don't ever see him as a guy who's going to rush things, especially with a guy like Ciryl. I think that he's going to want to see how he moves. Ciryl is a guy who's fast on his feet, who will strike you in a diversified amount of ways. Or, maybe Jon tries to impose that will immediately with the grappling, because that was such an eye-opening thing against Francis, where we all thought that Ciryl was going to have the advantage there, and he did not. And Francis really won the fight on that and did it on 2 busted knees.
Jake, if you can find some shady website that can get me Jon's odds already by knockout, see if you can find it. I don't think you can find an incredible place like BetMGM just yet, but maybe, because how surprised would you be? I'm just looking at the frame of Ciryl Gane. Jon, the first time as heavyweight. Jon, typically, when he does finish fights, he's not really a knockout artist in the way that you might think, since he is the best fighter of all time. What I'm asking you is, how surprised would you be if Jon Jones, I'm talking about not a TKO, not a bunch of punches, if he just punches him in the face and puts Ciryl Gane on his ass? How surprised would you be by that?
I'm seeing it in a place right now. He's plus 460 to win by KO. The favorite method is
that's about what I was going to say. 5-1.
The favorite method right now is 2-1 for him to beat Ciryl. And then Jon by submission is plus 550. So look, they're putting they're putting the finishes of Jon both about in the same realm, but mostly they think that he is a point guy, that he's going to go and win this thing by decision. And I think that, Jon, when he knows that he has a guy beat, and we definitely can see that safe side of him, but could also see his side if he really feels like he is dominating and he feels stronger than Ciryl. That's going to be an interesting thing, because one of the things with Gane is, he is big, but I don't feel like he is not like the most monstrous heavyweight in the world either. It's not like he's taking on a guy who has to cut to 265 or anything like that. So, it's going to be interesting, man. I'm really fascinated by it because, in a lot of ways I am judging this off of what's essentially a ghost, a guy who's been away for a long time, who's not in that same weight class. But I feel like at some point you also just have to bet on greatness. And I just believe in Jon when he is focused, when he does have a goal in mind. I do think that we have seen a guy who's the best to ever do it, you know, with all the demons that he's had to face, with all the missteps that he's had. When that cage door locks and he really wants to prove a point, man, there just seems to be nobody ever better to do it. And that is really what I'm betting on next week. And I think that I'm getting John at a pretty good number, even knowing, like, typically when I have him, I got to bet him as a heavy favorite. And it's not that I don't have to reach that deep for this one next week.
I believe this is actually the closest on the number a John fight has been. Maybe the first time around against DC, but minus 165. You're talking about a good number. If we agree that he's the greatest of all time against a guy in Cyril Gane that's relatively new, at least in the UFC, yeah, that's a great number. March is just full of unbelievable fights. So let's keep talking about them, because I think it's one of the best months I've ever seen the UFC put on. Usman Edwards, we get to see that rematch. That's coming up March 18th in London at UFC 286. I just can't see a path to victory for Leon Edwards. And to be honest with you, I know these guys don't think of it this way, but it kind of feels like Leon got what he came for. And if he's somehow to pull it off again, great. But I think to some level, he almost surprised himself. Certainly the way it finished and how late it finished. He knows how that went down. He knows that he got dominated. He knew that if it happened again, he was going to be an underdog, even as the champion. And that's where we are with Usman, still a pretty sizable favorite. What I'm telling you is I'm emptying the bank account on Usman.
This is such a strange thing, because I love Kamaru Usman, and I thought that, you know, this guy was going to be on his path to matching or even passing GSP as the greatest welterweight of all time. I just think that there is a level of invincibility that you lose when you lose like that, and if a guy pulls out a Hail Mary like that, right? How do you feel like you're going to lose in any moment? You love Patrick Mahomes. One of the things that's crazy about him, you think about that Texans game where they got down 21, and doesn't matter. Like, he pulled it out. And if you can win in that situation,
hold on, let me get this in. I was there.
Yes.
There.
Okay.
So it's
like when you win in those situations where it looks like you have no shot, how do you have any feeling like, oh, how's it going to go any worse the next time around? I know the way the guy's going to do it, but I just stay patient and I could find my way. You know, people will say, I get it. Like, at one point there was a stand up in that last round. It was a little bit weird, and Kamaru got careless. He could definitely take to another football match. He could take the air out of the football, and he could ride this whole thing away, a la the way Islam did against Volkanovski. So it's probably a safer place to put your money. But I got to think that Leon's going into this thing with just such an incredible amount of confidence, because he took out the boogeyman in the most unlikely of circumstances. Now he's going to be in his hometown. He's already got a win over him. They're 1-1. This is technically a trilogy. I think for him, he's got to feel really, really good going into this one. He's got to have some a different level of confidence going into it. So I don't know, man. I kind of like the way I kind of like Leon in this one, and I say that as a huge Usman fan.
Wow, I'd be shocked, absolutely shocked. I'd be shocked if Usman doesn't finish this fight. Just the way that the last one finished, I'm not saying you should be embarrassed by it, but there's no reason to lose a fight like that late into a fight. So I think Usman knows that. He knows he dominated. He knows he had a couple of chances probably to finish the fight the first time that he didn't. So I think that he's all in, not just on winning the fight, but finishing it. As far as legacy goes, because you were talking about he was kind of creeping up in the rearview mirror of GSP, I don't think because he lost that fight versus Leon that conversation ends. That being said, if Leon beats Usman again, then we can start talking about Leon's legacy, because his resume is as good as anybody. His win streak is as long as anybody. And if you beat Usman twice, then, you know, if we were ever going to have a conversation about Usman's greatness, it feels like you have to talk about Leon ahead of it.
Yeah, but he's got to, like, you got to start stacking him. You know, like we were doing this with Charles Oliveira too, and then Charles Oliveira got dealt with after a couple of fights. You know, like, it's hard. It's hard what these guys do. And that's, you know, there is an appreciation you have to have for the longevity. You have to have an appreciation for all the title defenses that John Jones had, a Demetrius Johnson, a Valentina Shevchenko, and Amanda Nunes. Like, the thing that separates these guys and gals is the fact that they are able to stay on top with different situations, with different people coming at them, with injuries in camp. And yeah, I mean, look, you beat Kamaru Usman, the essential pound for pound top 3 guy twice, yeah, that's a huge feather in your cap. But no, now you need to start. He's got to go beat Colby. He's got to go beat Gilbert. He's got to go beat whomever's at the top there at welterweight.
By the way, the last time that Leon lost a fight was December 19th, 2015. So 8 years ago on the calendar to the aforementioned Kamaru Usman. So he's beat everybody in his weight sense. And I get it. Some of the names aren't maybe as big as you would hope, and certainly not title fights. That's a whole lot different. Fiziev Gaethje, that I was talking about should be an ultimate pick'em fight. When we brought our guest on earlier, he said that he thinks it's a bad matchup for Gaethje. I think it's a bad matchup for Fiziev because everybody, I mean, nobody really wants to fight Justin Gaethje. I don't think I've ever bet against the highlight. I think I'm going to take him that night too.
It's tough. You have to you got to be able to weather the storm of what he's able to do with those leg kicks, because it really breaks you down. It's a tough thing to go through, and really, you know, Justin Gaethje is so good in those war of attritions. Dustin Poirier got him when he first got into the UFC, was able to just out tough him, out violent him, but mostly you have to have that element of grappling too. You do have to have that element of being able to take him out. So it is a tough matchup for Fiziev. That being said, Fiziev did answer a lot of questions that last time out against RDA. First 5-round fight, looked better in the 5th than he did at any point in the fight. So, this is his next step up. This is for him to continue proving. You beat Justin Gaethje, you're well on your way to proving that you are a true contender at lightweight. And it feels like you want to talk about a movie. These guys got a movie-like types of fights because we just saw with Yair versus Josh Emmett. You have a banger and a guy who really likes to diversify with all kinds of things that he goes at it with. So going to be an interesting matchup when these guys lock the cage door.
We've also got Merab taking on Piotr Jan, Chito Vera versus Corey Sandhagen. Valentina is back, so is Cody and Marvin Vettori, and Bo Nickel, who's coming on the show next week. And no promises, but fingers and toes crossed again. We're hoping to bring on the greatest fighter of all time, John Bones Jones. For all the help back in Chicago, Jacob, and of course my guy Jake in Philly, Brendan in Miami. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine in Kansas City. The fight, Jake Paul tomorrow. Enjoy the fight. We're out.